Well, hey, everybody. This is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. So glad to have you here on a Shift Break that actually has a guest on it. Sometimes we do that. And actually, there's only one time that we've done that, and it's been with the same person, Joe Marrocco. Joe was our guest on the show earlier this week, talking about whether you should roast your own coffee. I think it was a fantastic episode for roasters and for future roasters. So if you haven't listened to that, please go back. Listen to episode 217, all about if you should roast your own coffee. Now, this episode today is brought to you by the amazing ground control Cyclops brewer from Voga Coffee. Today, we're still operating in our shops in a limited capacity. To-go coffee rules the day. And if you really want to elevate your to-go options, we're talking about elevating your batch brew. And that is where the ground control comes in, because it allows you to consistently brew superior beverages through SCA award-winning extraction technology. It's a revolutionary technology that allows you to pull from your coffee flavors you never thought were possible with your batch brew. So this is a wonderful opportunity to level up your brewed coffee. The customer experience now is really dependent on the quality of the beverage in the cup, as the experience is limited still in most cafes. You can beautifully craft coffee, cold brew, tea, cocoa, and concentrates all from a single machine, and it's really easy to use and train people on too. So if you want to offer your customers the best possible to-go coffee experience, then I highly recommend you outfit yourself with the Ground Control Cyclops brewer. Go find out more information over at vogacoffee.com. That's VOGA coffee.com. This episode is also brought to you by Baratza. Baratza designs precision burr grinders with a small footprint that are perfect for both home and commercial environments. They've built such a solid reputation for manufacturing innovative grinders that just meet every demand that you could have of a coffee grinder. No matter what your brewing device of choice is, there's a Baratza grinder that fits that need perfectly. And they're really committed to making sure their customers feel cared for. They're one of the most trusted and recommended and innovative companies in specialty coffee. And especially these days, as we are trying to make great coffee more accessible to our customers and teaching people about brewing coffee at home even more, Baratza is the perfect company to partner with in helping make that happen. So to find out more information, please visit Baratza.com. I think you're going to enjoy the incredible support you get from this team of people. They're genuinely caring about you, the end user, and your desire to make amazing coffee. Again, go visit them at Baratza.com. Okay, well, like I said, today we're going to be joined by Joe Marrocco talking about building an accessible coffee menu. And this is really key for us now, because this is a time where a lot of us are thinking about what the future looks like. And to me, and what I've said on this show before and several others in the industry are saying, this is a time where accessibility and opening up our arms to a wider swath of people is going to be really key. And it all really starts from the ground up. It starts with what we offer people, how we talk about what we offer. And today we're going to talk to Joe about building that program, building a coffee menu and offering that is going to actually be suited to your customers and not necessarily something that's going to inadvertently alienate people. So I'm excited to welcome Joe back to the show, and here now is my interview about building an accessible coffee menu with Joe Marrocco. Well, Joe, thanks for joining me on another Shift Break. This is great to have you back, and I want to really dive into the subject of coffee accessibility. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be back on and excited to sit with your audience while they're on their shift break, which hopefully is an actual shift break from an actual shift.
A scheduled shift break.
Still able to work during these crazy times.
Yeah, exactly. So accessibility is a term that is getting really popular more and more, I think. It's up there with sustainability and other things like that. So as we talk about what the customers want from a coffee experience, I think we're broadening our scope, and we're philosophically all kind of, I don't know about all, but kind of in agreement that we need to be more accessible, and we want more people to enjoy specialty coffee. But when it comes down to what we do, what we say, how we just repeat that over and over again. It's a little muddy, and so that's where I'm hoping that you can help us a little bit here. First, I guess the intro question here would be, what defines accessibility of coffee for you? When you think about like having an accessible coffee menu, what do you think of?
When it comes to accessibility, obviously the first thing is, can a person find the thing that they're looking for? And in a world right now where there are thousands and thousands of coffee roasting companies, sometimes a coffee roasting company may be hard to just simply find. So obviously you need to be visible, you need to be out there, and you need people to find you. And part of that can be how you maintain your web store, how you promote your web store, and how you link that web store to possibly other outlets like an Amazon.com or other platforms that can promote your coffee. But then also in the grocery store, are you in grocery stores? Are you in specialty shops? Are there other places where people can interact with your coffee? And the more of those kind of places there are, the more accessible your coffee will be from a physical, geographical standpoint. But then also from like a flavor standpoint or a marketing standpoint, when people find your coffee, are they going to buy it? Are they going to find that it connects with them? Does it feel accessible to them? And this really comes down to a marketing decision on what your bags look like, what your bags have to say about the coffee, and how you are treating the person that is looking at your product that you hope that they buy. And by treatment, I mean, I kind of want to make a distinguishment between accessibility and something that's just dumbed down. I think a lot of us in the maybe higher end third wave or, let's say contemporary high-end specialty world may think about accessibility as being like an antithesis to high quality. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's bringing whatever you do to a person in a way that they can access it and access that, theoretically access that with their mind, where they say, oh, I get it now. Mm-hmm. The process of that starts with the communication that you have about it. And it doesn't have to be dumbed down to be in simple terms. Simplifying an equation is not dumbing an equation down. It's making the equation make more sense despite the equation's complexity. And so if you can simplify the information in a way that doesn't disparage the person who is looking at it, but also doesn't disparage you as a company, that kind of holds the tension of both of those pieces of dignity in place, then I think people will connect to the product a lot more. And then the third part of the accessibility is once they have bought that thing, once they've bought, in this case, your roasted coffee, maybe whole bean, they actually need to access it in a way that is usable to them and pleasing. If I am a coffee roaster and I've roasted a coffee that cups really, really well on my cupping table, and then I sell that coffee to a person, all of the information is great. All of the, they found it. They really like what they're reading. They like everything about it so far. And then they take it to their house and they go to brew it and it tastes like garbage. Mm-hmm. Then not only have you made it not accessible to them theoretically, but you've also undone the other steps that they've already walked through. And now that person is actually loyal against you. They no longer will try your product because they have been kind of burned. Whereas
they're dedicated to being your enemy.
Exactly. They're like, why would I spend that money with this company again whenever they made all these promises to me that didn't get fulfilled? And so when it comes to the exchange of selling something to somebody, that follow through on the promises that we make during the process of them finding it, buying it, using it, will hopefully, if we can fulfill those promises, result in them actually enjoying it and connecting with it, philosophically and in this case, gustatorially. So if they can do that, then they will be loyal. They will not only have accessed it, but they'll also access it again and again and again. And that takes a different kind of look at how we go about presenting the coffee in the bag to a home user, especially during times like this. They need to be able to brew that coffee well at home and connect with the promises on the bag. And so, one of the easiest fixes for that is during quality control, using a home brewer, and maybe maybe on the information on the bag, having some simplified terms on how to brew it through a home brewing system, or using a blade grinder. Instead of disparaging those things, maybe we could spend more time with those things and see if we can make our coffee taste awesome despite the brewing scenarios that people are using it in.
All of what you just said is great. And thinking through the customer's experience of purchasing and then ultimately enjoying that coffee, we tend to put ourselves in the customer's place and say, well, here's what I like. But, how do we most effectively, maybe the first step in the right direction to craft our offerings, like in terms of even the type of green that we buy and how we roast the coffee, how do we develop that menu so that we set it up from the foundation to actually be accessible, to give people a better chance of doing what you're talking about?
Well, a really good tool for finding what people want, need, and like is to actually ask them.
What?
And this is a tool that often in our specialty coffee segment and in most specialty foods and beverages, we don't really spend a lot of time crowdsourcing what people like. But in larger companies, through a quality control program, or let's call it a sensory analysis program, they do customer studies on a regular basis, or maybe we should call it a consumer study, to where you can say, between these two different things, which one do you like better? And the consumer can then answer directly, I like this one better. And we can easily do these things within our specialty segments. But one of the things that stands in the way of that is hubris. We think that we are the expert and the customer is not the expert, and the customer needs to learn about the product that we're the expert on and appreciate it for what it is. However, we never give them a chance to really appreciate it if we don't bridge the gap between them and us and talk to them about maybe what they like and don't like, because what they don't like could lead us to understanding that it's not necessarily the coffee they don't like. It's they don't like the extraction that they're getting of that coffee in their house, and we can help fix that. We can help fix some of these things in a way that is not patronizing, and that doesn't fall into the trap of us feeling like they're dumb and we're smart, but instead is a collaborative effort toward an equal and mutually sought after goal of them drinking our coffee and liking.
I like that you brought up that hubris, because you mentioned we want them to see what this coffee is, and then immediately thinking like, well, what the coffee is basically dependent on who's drinking it. Like the truth of the coffee and in its quality, you get into weird territory when we talk about quality. It's really dependent on the person's taste. And so to them, like when we see a Sumatran, more developed Sumatran fly off the shelves, a lot of us in specialty coffee are kind of chagrined at that success, like even put an asterisk next to that as a success. But it seems like we need to start embracing that in saying, hey, people are voting in spite of our efforts for these coffees that we wouldn't compete with, but they love.
And if you think about that asterisk that we would put next to that more developed Sumatra, what that implies, what that denotes, I should say, is this consumer likes a thing that we think is subpar and that we think is not good enough for them to like. And so we're going to keep striving to push the consumer away from what they actually like and toward what we're telling them that they should like. Mm-hmm. And that should be really looked at more deeply as to whether the should comes from some kind of culinary place of superiority, or whether it comes from some kind of actual ethical principle of, yes, this is better ethically than this other thing over here. And ethics and quality can have some things that kind of go hand in hand, but I think a lot of times we use quality as a club to kind of say, you're also, if you're not drinking quality coffee, you're also drinking unethical coffee. And those two things are not always the same thing.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, especially when you zoom out and you take a look at, what ethics, what moves the needle on a more resilient community or a resilient supply chain. Those coffees that fly off the shelves and are more developed, they are the bread and butter of so many cafes, and that's very helpful for a lot of people, including your business, actually. So, I wonder, as we wrap up here, I want to kind of get into the idea of tactics and say, let's say we want to reconcile this sort of subconscious enmity that we have toward accessible coffees, and embrace a strategy going forward. Is it blends? Is it developed coffees? What are the key things to start including on the shelves in your cafe to, really offer people something that will resonate with them?
Yeah, I think that blends are fantastic. They're fantastic for solidifying a brand, for sure, because you can name the blend whatever you want, and you can build a whole campaign around that blend that really underpins the overall marketing campaign for your company. And darker roasts are definitely one of those things too that attracts the same kind of coffee drinker that is maybe a blend drinker, but that can also bridge the gap between a blend drinker to being a single origin drinker. But more than that, I think if you look at your lineup and you say, okay, I'm all single origin coffees, or I'm all blends, or I'm all light roasts, or I'm all dark roasts, right there, you could say, this is a hill I'm willing to die on, and probably end up dying on that hill because you are isolating yourself from large segments of the market. And those segments of the market are human beings that have an informed palate and that can appreciate beauty when beauty is brought to them. So by saying we're only doing this one thing, you're isolating yourself to one market, and you're never opening up the door to anybody else to maybe learn why the one thing that you are doing is special. Mm-hmm. And so accessibility means that you really have to kind of open up your doors and sometimes do some things that are outside of your normal mainstream. Not to say that you need to compromise, because again, this is not an ethics question, but to say that you need to explore and find bridges to the people that you want to bring into your business.
Joe, thank you so much. This is, I'm sure we could, record one or two more episodes about this subject, but these are great places to start with our mindset and how we conduct our business. So thank you again for joining me. And this has really been wonderful.
It's my pleasure. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Well, I hope that you all enjoyed that interview with Joe. Lots of fantastic points. Again, accessibility is something that we really have to make a substantive action in our businesses. We've got several different things that we can apply from this conversation, and I hope that you take the first steps in applying these to your cafe and to your roastery. A big thanks to Joe for joining me on the show again, and thank you all for joining me here at another Shift Break episode. Join me next week as we explore the world of cold brew, the ins and outs, sanitation, and do's and don'ts and things like that with Matt Bushman of Alto Cold Brew. You're not going to want to miss that one, especially as the weather warms up. This is super important. So join me on episode 218 of Dealing with Cold Brew with Matt Bushman. And with that, thank you again, and I'll see you here next week for another episode of Shift Break, from keys to the shop.